Yo, what is going on, guys? It is your boy, Dreadhound, and we are back here in the House of Hounds. We have a special guest today. We have Jordan Paul Haro. You know him, you love him. Dr. L plus ratio. I'm super excited. How are you doing today?
Doing fantastic. Thank you for having me, Joshua.
No problem, man. Thank you for your time. I'm super excited. There was so much hype behind the release of your character, and for a variety of reasons. But, let's start at the top. How did you get started in voice acting?
Well, I'll give you the short version of it. I tend to make short stories longer than they actually need to be, or I think more accurately, long stories longer. So
You're fine.
I got started, I want to say, in my voice acting career specifically for via YouTube,
Okay.
actually. And prior to that, I had little acting gigs and little acting endeavors here and there, more so community based, but never on the level of like wanting to be a professional at it. Like I always enjoyed being a performer. I always enjoyed singing, dancing, and just engaging like my friends and family and just being kind of like the goofy like kid essentially that could just do movie quotes off the top of his head and impersonations.
That's awesome.
But for me, YouTube was kind of like ground zero of my voice acting career because like a lot of people, I want to say during the when YouTube first started taking off, there was kind of an influx of these kind of low key, like really talented impressionists, Brizzy Voices, Brock Baker, just to name a few,
Hmm.
where they had a space to showcase their talents and they didn't need an agent. They didn't need kind of because that's what YouTube represented. It was like it was all about the users.
Yeah.
So at the time, I didn't really know what YouTube was because I just thought it was like just another platform where you post a lot of cat videos and a lot of like America's Funniest Home Videos kind of a thing and all these fail videos because they all those existed on their own platform like Fail Army and like a couple of others that were just solely dedicated to funny content.
Yeah.
And whenever I would do in my impressions for friends and family, they always just told me the same, like, "Oh, put your stuff on YouTube, put your stuff on YouTube." And I'm like, "Shut up, I'm not doing that," kind of a thing. But after the upteenth person told me, encouraged me to do so, I'm like, "All right, if it'll get you off my back, I will." So I put out the first video on my YouTube channel. I called it Dead Tom for lack of a better term because at the time I wasn't thinking about the longevity or the future of my like I was just looking for something to like like a quick and dirty like title.
Yeah.
And so a couple went through my brain from for nostalgia reasons like the Power Rangers and a couple of anime titles. But Muppet Treasure Island popped in there and there was a
Okay.
character by the name of Dead Tom. There's Old Tom, Real Tom, and then Dead Tom. Excuse me. So Dead Tom kind of stuck. And so I'm
Hmm.
like, why not? So I create that title and I start off my YouTube channel with my impressions collage. And that was I think around maybe 5 6 minutes of content I want to say. And that was just really no plan. I did some soft research from other people that had done impressions videos and I was like, okay, I was like trying to figure out how do you get engaged in this? How do you
Yeah.
stay funny? And like, what's the most intriguing way to cut this? There was a lot of jump cuts essentially. So it was just me and a really crappy digital camera that I just put in front of myself. And I didn't have a tripod. So I put it up on my desk and I'm on my knees and like kind of going side to side and go intercutting, but like, and I didn't have a list of characters. So I just had a roulette of characters that I did and recorded that, put it up on my channel, forgot about it. I'm like, okay, I did the thing. Now please leave me alone. So some time passes and I check back on it and it actually got some traffic. I think I had like maybe like 10,000 views, like which is not like it's not great, but I'm
No,
like it
it
got some
is.
attention.
It is.
But so that's what kind of like started it. I kind of got bit by the YouTube bug on that sense. So I started putting out more content, like other voices that I could do, reenactments from some of my favorite franchise and some of my favorite content growing up as a kid. And I watched a lot of content, like which is kind of the norm for a lot of millennials growing up in the 80s and the 90s, where we grew up with and like anime was just starting to like grow and
Yeah.
expand. But it was at the time where if you liked anime, you were kind of a like an outcast. Like
Yeah.
what is this? So, but yeah, like the Disney Channel, like Disneyland was my home away from home, and so I grew up with that, and
Yeah.
like a lot of movies, a lot of animated features where I loved all these characters, and of course, video games was like the foundation of me wanting to impersonate some of these voices and characters. So as time went on, as I put up more content, I was getting people reaching out to me.
That's
And some of
awesome.
the most prevalent voices that I was able to pull off at the time was Zim from Invader Zim.
Hmm.
That was like I think that got the most attention, and that'll serve later with some of our follow up questions. Hiccup from How to Train Your Dragon, and there was like a third one I can't remember off the top of my head right now, but like I had like a solid like arsenal of characters in my back pocket. But for a while there, I was kind of known as that guy that can kind of do a Richard Horvitz Invader Zim impression.
Hmm.
And so one thing kind of led to another. And as I'm collaborating with all these other artists and realizing there's a huge community of anime dubbers. And this was right around the same time with Yu Gi Oh! Abridged and DBZ Abridged, where
Yeah.
people were taking these famous franchises and doing their own thing with it. And so one thing kind of led to another. And as I'm kind of figuring things out, life in the background, which is a story in and of itself,
Hmm.
I'm growing and I'm learning and of course making mistakes at the same time, which is all a part of that journey. But like my first paid gig actually was with the brick animations community, what basically people who take Legos and
Yeah.
make stop animations with them.
Okay.
Uh, the content creator in question is Forest Fire 101. He's one of like the big daddies of the brick animation community, and
Hmm.
I'm still friends with him. He still lives in Cali here, but we kind of lost touch after a while. But again, just kind of opportunity after opportunity and figuring things out where I realized that okay, I kind of want to see if I can do this.
Yeah.
And so when you start off on your own, you take classes, you figure out as much as possible like okay, how do I make this into a career?
Right.
And at the time, I was dealing with a lot in the background and trying to navigate just my private life, but also this side career, which really was kind of a side career. Although I wanted it to be my career, I didn't know what the heck I was doing.
Hmm.
So after some mismatching and of like figuring out what I wanted to do, I try and put all my chips into voice acting, and I had done some workshops and done um, some classes with um, with some famous voice actors. Um, I don't know if he'd agree with me, but I consider Chuck Huber one of my mentors in
Okay.
the famous voice of Android 17.
That's awesome.
And
That's awesome.
yeah, absolutely. And so I learned a lot from him just with his master class. And of course, I'm taking other things in the background. But at some point or other, I hit a stagnation point. And at a certain point, I realized, okay, this isn't panning out. I gotta get a regular job.
Hmm.
And so I put my career on the back burner on the shelf for like a good season or two. And so that was just I want to say at the beginning of the pandemic actually because a lot of things happened
Yeah.
during that time. So for a long stint there was just nothing going on, but I knew that in my spirit that was what I was good at and what I would be successful at. And then so rewind just to 2023, I it kind of felt like I was able to take that career and like try again with it.
Yeah.
And I was in a dead end job at that point. I was, and I not to discredit it, but I was working as a machine operator,
Yeah.
as a technician for a warehouse job, and we made micro parts for aerospace and military project, kind of hush hush projects.
Yeah.
But but like I knew I'm like okay, let's give this one more try, and but essentially like again one thing led to another, and I think as we talk about this further,
Yeah.
it'll lead into that. So, but here I am right now after much trial and error and making a lot of mistakes, but learning from them and growing. And being where I am today. So
Well, listen, that is an incredible journey, and to hear, you started from the content creation space and was able to transition that to something that you're now like super passionate about. That is
mhm.
phenomenal. Um, and a lot of those mistakes that resonates with me because as a content creator, obviously I'm not the biggest creator, right? But I've been at this for a while. My hounds, they're at my back and they support me, and a lot of that came
Yes,
from trial and error. It's like, here's some mistakes, here's some things, but it makes you who you're meant to be, I always say. But let me
true.
ask, how did you get the role as Dr. Ratio? That is huge.
Yes. That the short answer is, and this is a lot of actors basically giving this answer, but there is a longer story. I'll try and give at least a shotgun version of it now.
Okay.
But short answer is I auditioned for it, but that opportunity was really given to me.
Mm,
So I'm not sure if any of the other cast members from Honkai have shared this with you, but we have an incredible voice director, the
mm-hmm.
legendary Philip Bach, who has been the guiding force and for all of our sessions. Philip is an incredible gentleman. I practically owe this whole thing to him essentially because during that long period of nothing, I was feeling that restlessness
Yeah.
in my spirit, and I'm like, I know I can. I just don't. I know I can make this work, but I don't know what the heck I'm doing. And that's during the beginning of 2023. I get an email out of nowhere. Like
Mm,
because I had platforms of like I had a website, I had this, but I just let it collect dust after a course of time. But this gentleman by the name of Philip Bach reaches out to me and says, "Hey, call me." He starts out with that, and I'm like, "Oh, okay." But he follows up with, "My name is Philip Bach. Please look me up on IMDb. I want to talk to you.
yeah.
And hopefully, my credits will speak for themselves." Sure enough, I'm like, okay, who is this guy? I sure enough, I look him up on Google. I links me to IMDb, and I find him voice director. Then like credit after credit of like he's on AAA games. He's done animated features, like so many shows on many streaming services. He's somebody. And
Right.
he's reaching out to a nobody like me. So I'm like, hey, Philip, how's it going? Like trying to play it cool
Right.
even though like I was like so excited. I'm like, this is somebody reaching out to a nobody like me. And so we hit it off really well. And he's like, so Jordan, I gotta ask, are you represented? Are you part of the union? Like I say no to both. He's like, well, I have no idea how the hell you're not a part of the union or represented for that matter. I'm working on a project right now,
Yeah.
and it's called Smite. And so I knew just enough about Smite to like know what he was talking about. And he's like, we were doing a contract right now with Nickelodeon to get some of the likeness of their characters to
Yeah.
implement into the game as alternate skins. Danny Phantom, Fairly Odd Parents, and as I mentioned before, Invader Zim.
That's
And
awesome.
and again, I was kind of that guy that could do an Invader Zim impression on the YouTube, um, on YouTube, and so at some point during the casting process, Philip got frustrated and took matters into his own hands because the talent that they were reaching out to wasn't fitting the bill
Okay.
for this iconic character. So he takes it upon himself to go on YouTube, type in Invaders Zim Impressionist, and he finds my videos. And then then just connection through broken connection, he reaches out to me through my website, which like I would never have any sort of connection like this. Like odds of that happening are astronomical.
That
Like
is
a
phenomenal.
really an act of God. And so he says, I want you to audition for this and like get it back to me as quickly as you can. So I do my thing, I send it off to him. He loves it. Some time goes by, he gets back to me, says, I've got good news and bad news. I'm like, tell me the bad news first. He says, sadly, you didn't get Zim, much to my disappointment. I was Jordan, I fought hard for you. Like you knocked it out of the park.
Yeah.
Like the guy that they went with, I know him personally. Like I'm proud of him, good on him, but I was just telling the casting directors, you guys are idiots. Like this guy is like clearly the guy for the job, but whatever, it's out of my
Yeah.
hands. Good news is we know each other now.
Right.
I'm going to start sending you auditions. And because for a while there, I when you're your own boss when it comes to being a voice actor,
Yeah.
you really have to hustle. You really have to go out of your way to, and this is all just part of the process. But I was on voices.com. I was on like a lot of other platforms to try and find work.
Yeah.
And again, it's far and few between, depending on what season is, depending on how well you're basically managing yourself. And I'll be honest, I wasn't great at managing myself. But regardless, though, this was like significant in my career. So he starts sending me auditions, and it's all for Smite. I
Okay.
book one gig through him. And this is like my first in studio recording in North Hollywood at Rocket Sound Studios. The character in question was for an alternate skin of Ho Yi, the archer of Ho Yi. I can't spell it for you, but this
Mm.
was his alternate winter skin. Winter's Mark Ho Yi is the character that I landed,
Okay.
and so I went in studio, and this was my first time directing. Well, interacting with Philip on a professional level, and it was incredible but very overwhelming at the same time. I
Right.
recognize that Philip has incredible high standards, and rightfully so. That was something that was very new waters for me to navigate,
Yeah.
but it was still an incredible, like, the entire time I had kept on having to pinch myself, but at the same time I was still kind of dealing with a lot where I was battling anxieties and things, and
Yeah.
like there was a little voice in the back of my head that said, like, don't screw up, don't screw up, don't screw up, like, do good, like, remember your training, everything that I had, done previous
Yeah.
to become a competent voice actor. And so Smite comes and goes, even though I don't book anything else through that. A new project rolls around, and it's called Honkai Star Rail. And at the time, I didn't know like what that was. Like, so I did some soft research. I'm like, okay, it's by the same company who did Genshin Impact. So
Yeah.
I didn't really know what to expect. But at the time, I was recognizing that Genshin Impact was kind of like a joke now, because a lot of content creators like, this video is sponsored by Genshin Impact, and so very much the same vein as Raid Shadow Legends, and so I'm like, oh boy, here we go.
I haven't
So
done any of those.
so I don't really know what to expect, and but the first couple batch of characters, they come and go. I don't book anything.
Mm.
The next batch of characters come around, and there's a couple of interesting ones, but one that catches my eye is Dr. Ratio.
Mm.
And as I'm looking at like the profile of this character and reading his bio, a lot of things like really kind of clicked in my brain. Where as I'm reading his bio, he's incredibly intelligent. He's got 3 PhDs. He's very condescending, very prideful, talks down to anyone who's not on his level intellectually. And so I'm like, okay. So I immediately think of this persona in the back of my head, and the first character that kind of pops in there is Benedict Cumberbatch as Sherlock from the
Oh,
Sherlock
that's
series.
good.
And so I'm like, okay, so that's kind of like the foundation. I didn't want to make him completely British,
Mm.
but I want to make him at least like pompous and British enough where it would at least sound unique in some way.
Yeah.
So Benedict Cumberbatch was kind of like the foundation, and then in regards to just the attitude, I sprinkle in a little bit of Tom Hiddleston as Loki. So that was kind of like the curation of this character that I had put together. So I auditioned for Dr. Ratio back in May
Mm.
of 2023, and I sent that audition off, and then I don't hear anything back for, I think, over almost a month. But then when I do, I our coordinator reaches out to me, and they say, "Hey, the client wants to know how you want to be credited," and but nothing else. And I'm
Mm.
like, okay, if you could, Jordan Paul Haro. There's actually other Jordan Haros out there in the industry.
Okay.
I'd like to keep my credits distinct. Follow up question: did I book something? And they, of course, like elaborated further. Like, yes, you auditioned for this character, Doctor Ratio, back in May. The client wants to sign you, and
That's
so I'm like,
awesome.
awesome, that's great. Kind of like that happy-go-lucky, like, yay, I got a job kind of a thing. Not
Right.
really understanding the weight of like what that was. So shortly after I have that interaction with our coordinator, Philip calls me, and he's like, Jordan, congratulations. Like I'm so happy for you. I'm like, yeah, thanks. He's like, I don't think you understand like what you just got. And so that really like piques my interest. And I'm like, enlighten me. He's like, Jordan, not only did you book like a pivotal character, like, because this game is going to be huge.
Yeah.
It just launched this year of 2023, and it's already starting to become getting more buzz than Genshin.
Mm.
So, and you got a companion character. This character is going to stick with the narration for the next year or so. So,
Mm.
not only is that going to supply you with work for that time, but also Jordan, the popularity behind this character is going to be incredible.
Yeah.
I won't be surprised if conventions reach out to you, if like all the things that I've been hoping and praying for, he's like painting with his words in real time, and I'm like, it's collectively just like blowing my mind of like, I've dreamt of this. I've wanted this my whole life, kind of a thing. And here Philip is telling me all these things that it almost sounds too good to be true. Because I'm like, this doesn't happen to nobodies like me. And so he basically says, like wraps it up with Jordan, like this, I just want to let you know that this is gonna be huge for you. And not only that, but this is a foot in the door in the industry for talent agencies and people like, hey, that's the voice of Dr. Ratio.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, these are all things that like I'm hearing and like I'm getting excited about, but I still don't really grasp the full concept because it's not happening like yet.
Right.
So, but more or less, that's essentially how I ended up landing Dr. Ratio. Like it just out of these astronomical numbers of me like submitting against all like very very talented people most likely, but you kind of know in part just by proxy with what the other actors that you've interviewed,
Yeah.
how like what you're facing whenever you're auditioning for big roles like this. And so that's more or less essentially how I got Dr. Ratio. And I'm trying to think if I'm leaving anything out, but more or less that's the story.
It's so awesome to hear the influences that went into Dr. Ratio. Tom Hiddleston, Benedict
Yes.
Cumberbatch, and they always carry that air of you're talking to the smartest one in the room and you're too dumb to realize it. So, but
Very much so.
there, there was so many times when I was going through the story and I was just like, I know it's a game, I know it's a script, but I really feel like I'm being talked down to. Like, I was like, bro. Like there was a part in the story where you're it's like you're kind of going through like a little mystery kind of like backtrack deal, and there was a couple times I
Yes.
selected the wrong answer, and I was like, brother, that was just mean. It's like that was just mean. And but you being able to convey that's awesome to elicit that emotion. But let me
Yeah.
ask, how much of Dr. Ratio or how much of you is present in that performance?
I'll say personality wise, not a whole lot.
Okay,
Tone
that's a good thing.
wise, yeah, yeah, yeah. Tone wise, I would say maybe a little more. Whenever it comes to voice acting, I try and keep a character, especially if they're animated or it's in a video game. I try and keep my voice distinct, like my natural voice from whatever a character I'm auditioning for or
Yeah,
I'm portraying. Because I feel like I want to lose myself in that character.
yeah,
I really want to find a character or portray something that I've never done before. And Dr. Ratio was one of those endeavors that I wanted to keep distinct from my own voice, but I can still hear like because people still hear it whenever I interact with him. They're like, "Oh yeah, there's a little bit of Dr. Ratio just creeped in there." I'm like, "Oh wow, I didn't notice before." But personality wise, Dr. Ratio was exceedingly challenging for me because um I don't think anybody likes voicing an asshole. And so um because that was like the real big hurdle to get over during the recording sessions with Philip, because I would try and sneak in just a little bit of charm because in my mind I'm thinking, okay, anyone can fall in love with an asshole, like if you sneak in a little charm in there and
right.
like you're like, oh, you're so pretty kind of a thing, like pat your head and call you special or something. But but the thing is, well, what the reason why we love, and Philip actually explained this to me very quite eloquently whenever he would reprimand me for trying to sneak in that charm every so often. He's like, Jordan, the reason why people love Benedict Cumberbatch as Sherlock is because he's an asshole. It's because
Yes.
he doesn't spare your feelings. It's because he says it how it is, and he knows who he is. He is the smartest guy in the room, and anyone that's trying to tell him otherwise, like, you are just delaying like the solution getting presenting itself.
Yeah.
Like, get out of my way. Like, I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm about. Like, he doesn't, play well with others, and so like he
Mm.
has that brokenness in and of itself, which is why we love Sherlock, and which is why I think a lot of people really love Doctor Ratio, is because he's not really emotionally sensitive like
Yeah.
at all. Like he very much sees ignorance and stupidity as like as a disease, and it's
Mm.
and he wants he genuinely wants people to be better than themselves and to be smarter. But it's like almost like when if you're a dentist,
Yeah.
and but you hate germs and you hate cavities and so it's like you love the fact that you get to but like the work in and of itself is like your mouth is terrible. I don't want to touch it. Like, it's just disgusting. Like,
Right.
why couldn't you brush? Why couldn't you floss? Like, kind of like that level of frustration is what I
Well,
feel like. Yeah.
to piggyback off of that, there was such a subtle moment, and it was so beautiful in its execution when the dialogue between Doctor Ratio and Aventurine, who's dropping tomorrow.
Yes.
It was so cool because Ratio was laying into him with the insults, and he said one, and Aventurine was like, "Well, I didn't have that opportunity," and immediately Ratio apologized. And I was like, ooh,
Yes.
that's layers. He's like, yes, I hate stupidity, but if it was something outside of your control, he respects that. He understands that,
Yes.
and he's generally trying to make you better. Um,
Yes.
Even though he's tearing you
Absolutely.
down, you're like, okay, I got to elevate my game to to talk with this guy,
Hmm.
and
Yes.
that was so cool. That little interaction, because initially, like, obviously, I know it's a role, and we have fun with it. I was like, yo, this guy is a jerk. I was like, man, I do not like
Yeah.
brother right now, but that little interaction, I was like, oh, that was so nuanced, and there wasn't a lot of attention brought to it, but it opened up so much about the character where I was like, okay, I see what's going on here, and I like it. That was so cool.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's actually one of my favorite interactions, at least thus far, with the release of 2.1.
Mm,
And it also is a little frustrating because part of the norm when it comes to voice acting is rare is the day where you get the chance to voice in the same studio in the same space as your fellow actor.
right.
Because I know at Camden, I'm good friends with him. I love that man to death. And his performance is just incredible. Like, but I feel like if we were both in that same room recording that same situation, that same dialogue, we would have elevated it to the next level. And also it reveals like just something like subtle about Dr. Ratio's character where he had his assumptions and he thought that he had this preconceived notion about Aventurine that was false.
Yeah,
He saw him as kind of like this very um like privileged or kind of like accumulating that wealth of like
yeah,
not really understanding that like this guy's he's been through the ringer.
yeah,
Like, and he the reason there's a reason why he goes for high risk high reward and even like high failure at some points where because of course, as Dr. Ratio, as you may or not have played, he doesn't believe in luck. He doesn't believe that that there's like any point or any logistic in gambling and
yeah,
like and doing a like stats against yourself endeavor, because like that's ridiculous. That's
yeah,
insanity. Like, why would you do that? So already he had like an axe to grind with Aventurine, and so with just by personality wise, but the fact that he backtracked and he apologized, like I noticed during that recording session of like, dang, I think this is the first time I think my character has ever apologized to anybody.
yeah.
And so it was very significant in that moment, and I kind of wish that Camden was with me in that same recording studio. And but it is what it is. Everything costs money. But yeah, like that it's so great that you bring up that moment, like, because that is very special between those two characters.
It was so good. But I do have to ask you, especially with this being your breakout role, how did it feel when the hype behind Dr. Ratio was at like its all time high? They're like, we're giving away this character for free. This is like
Right.
a premier 5-star unit. Boom. Like, I know you were smiling ear to ear.
Oh my gosh. Well, funny enough, it didn't hit me until later,
Okay.
because this was kind of like, I don't want to say it was a a last minute decision, but
Mm.
it kind of felt like that, because the legendary Bill Butts, who voices Albert
Yeah.
for the live streams, he and I were called in because for the live stream we had to incorporate the segment for when Dr. Ratio comes in and introduces himself and delivers the good news, for lack of a better term. But when we were recording, and he felt the same way when I asked him, it felt like this was rushed, but also at the same time, it was a love letter to the fans,
Mm.
where we're giving away a free 5 star,
Right.
and that concept was just completely alien to me. So I didn't understand the significance of what I was doing
Yeah.
when I was recording those lines. It wasn't until after it dropped, like when I was seeing the reactions from the fans, the YouTubers, the streamers, of people saying, like, explain the significance, because as an actor you don't really understand like the entire picture of what's going on unless someone who is in the know-how explains it to you.
Right.
And I think Philip did explain it to me, but even then I didn't understand the gravity behind it. But it wasn't until after Dr. Ratio had dropped, and and people were going bananas like,
Yeah.
over it. And so I'm like, whoa, whoa. So it was almost kind of like a delayed reaction when you see the mushroom cloud in the distance, and then the shockwave just hits
Yeah.
you.
People were losing their minds.
Yes.
And I would be remiss if I didn't mention there are so many people who appreciate your work within my community. Um, they were like, "Hey, let him know we love him." So we do appreciate you and your work. But with saying that, how do you feel about your place within the Honkai Starville community? Because I love how involved the voice actors are. In the community with their characters. You
Yeah.
guys have your back and forth on X. I see you and Mr. Butts, Albert, in your
Yes.
competitions. Both of you, look. I work out myself, right? I'm a lifter, but it's awesome to see. It's like, yo, these guys are jacked. they're in. You got a man who voices this very like boisterous and present owl. You got the doctor. The
Yes.
doctor is kind of yoked too, but then
He
you see
is. Yeah.
you see their VAs. You're like, no, they're really about it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I love the memes that have popped up, well, in regards to our friendly
Yeah,
competitions, here and there. The first time I actually got a chance to work out with Bill Butts actually was, I can't remember for the exact time, but it was like my first time like working out with him, because
yeah,
before I just had my home gym going on, and then I had just recently moved from my old place to my new place, and so I didn't really have a gym membership yet, but I still had like a pull-up bar and a whole bunch of other little things here and there. But that was what started it. And when Bill invited me to his gym in Burbank, I was like, heck yeah, I do. I want to do that. And of course, there were other cast members from the Honkai cast that joined us, and of
yeah,
course, but the I think there was an infamous clip rolling around where it was all Bill Butt's idea, where he had the deadlift, like octagon, cutout, where
yeah.
I start off and then he takes over, and then I jump on his back. I'm like, I'll kill you. Kind of a thing. I absolutely love the artists and the fans that basically do like creative endeavors where Dr. Ratio's on top of Albert,
Yeah.
Albert's struggling to like lift. It's little moments like that that I just absolutely love, and like it feels like I don't deserve it, kind of a thing. And but the Honkai community has been nothing but sweet and kind to me, and And same thing with all the other voice actors. I have such admiration and respect for them because a lot of them have been doing this a lot longer than I have.
Mm,
Well, they've had better success than I have, and but also rightfully so, they've been doing it much longer. And but if anything, like it's been too good to be true.
yeah.
And again, I have to keep on pinching myself because I still kind of in some respects kind of see myself as that nobody that is just trying to make it work and it's just not working kind of a thing. And yeah.
We're 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 going to give you your flowers right now. You
Oh.
you put so much effort into this character. Hearing where you started, knowing where you are now, the sky's the limit. The sky's the absolute limit. And I love the fact that how can I say it? I'm not hearing Dr. Ratio right now, and that's talent. And there's nothing wrong with people using their speaking voice because it works for different characters and things like that. But you having
Yeah.
this arsenal of different characters and tonalities and wherewithal to
Hmm.
bring that and put it into a performance and for us to feel the nuance and for me to
Hmm.
completely forget in the moment, hey, this is someone voicing the character. It's like I'm transported into this world, and you guys have done such a great job of being a vehicle into that world. So thank you.
Hmm.
Thank you. There's so
My
much more
absolute
coming from
pleasure.
you. Um,
Thank you. Thank you.
I did want to ask, as we're starting to wrap up here, did you have any, advice for any, aspiring voice actors?
Yes, I do. That's one thing that I wanted to, at least, especially with my interactions on Twitter. I want to be a positive force for those that do find themselves in like a stuck situation where they feel like they can't change. They feel like they can't like be better than their current circumstances. Because that's why I'm very much active and I post my workout routine every so often because at one point or other I had a dad bod. Like I was pretty active when I was and not to like not to you know what I'm talking about,
Yeah.
but because I was pretty active my whole life, but especially when I got into university, like I definitely put my health in the back burner, and it really like that level of mentality, like when you kind of are or you're neglecting your basic needs because we're supposed we need to be active. It's
Yeah.
part of our health and our wellness. And also I want to share like all of my endeavors with the fan, not just the fans of Honkai, but anyone that wants to do what I do. That you can, it is achievable, but it's a very hard road. And one thing I do want to hammer into, not only just being a positive force to like be better than yourself and be better than your circumstances, is that like go after your dreams, but you need people in your corner to like shoot straight with you and not
Yeah.
just simply puff you up and because that was what my big hurdle and my challenge to get over was is that I did have people encouraging me and saying like, yeah, you're talented, go for it. But I personally didn't manage my expectations. Everyone told me that it was hard. Everyone told me that yeah, like this is gonna be a difficult journey, but if you stick with it. And so my failure to recognize that if I would just manage my expectations more so,
Hmm.
because beforehand I couldn't take rejection well. I took it very personally, and as an actor, you eat rejection for breakfast.
Yeah.
Like it's a lot of auditioning for a lot of projects. A lot of them you want really badly, and a lot of them you feel like you in some way like, oh, I could absolutely do this.
Right.
I know I could knock this out of the park. But more often than not, you hear nothing back for a long time,
Yeah.
and that can wear on someone. And that definitely was what happened to me, which is why I had to put my career on the shelf and focus on myself because I was in a very dark place. And so one thing I do want to at least drive home to aspiring voice actors is go after it, pursue it, but manage your expectations and have someone that's willing to shoot straight with you, even if it's someone that that isn't really super sensitive about your
Okay.
situation. Because one thing that I didn't listen to is that I did have people say like, hey, you need to get a job, like, hey, you need to do this, hey, you need to
Yeah.
do that. And I didn't want to hear it because I thought that if I just had access to the bigger fish,
Yeah.
like the bigger auditions, things would happen. And but sure enough, I did get access eventually to those bigger fish. Same thing happened.
Yeah.
And so I do want to tell aspiring voice actors it is achievable. Go after your dreams, but um, just know that like don't take my word for it. There are several other voice actors out there that'll tell you the same thing, where it's a difficult road. A lot of people want it, but if you stick with it, if you're smart about it, and you have people in your corner that have really good heads on their shoulders that want to um, see you succeed,
Yeah.
and really are willing to tell you the hard truths, then you'll do it. Like and so I want to be one of those voices and one of those presences in people where I want you to succeed. I
Right.
want you to go after and achieve what you want to achieve. And like this isn't just limited to voice acting. You as a content creator, I want you to succeed. I want this video to blow up, and I want you to get more followers and more subscribers, and I
Thank you.
want like the people that I interact with, I want to take away something from our interaction, that I just learned something from this person, or
Yeah.
like that, like I'm inspired to do more because of this person. And one of the great rewards of that, of having that spirit, especially with the interactions on X, when I share my sourdough loaf videos or
Yeah.
my workout videos, the great comments that I get back is, "Hey, this is causing me to go back to the gym." I'm like,
That's so cool.
"Yes, let's go, let's do it."
That is phenomenal. Listen, it has been an absolute pleasure talking with you. There's so many, little nuggets of wisdom, insight, and just some background information. It's always pretty cool, and the inspiration that you're providing to those to come after you. That's a beautiful thing. So thank you for that. Where can everyone find you?
Right now, the most active place that I'm at right now is Twitter, and you can
Okay.
find me at Jordan Paul Haro, all one word. I believe the J is capitalized, the P is capitalized, and the H is capitalized.
Okay.
I do have a YouTube channel, but I've kind of let that go, for lack of a better term. But if you are curious, if you want to see my cringy work from my past endeavors,
That's the
you
best
can look
stuff.
me up at Dead Tom at YouTube. And I do have a new YouTube channel that's solely dedicated to my in front of camera endeavors, and also some voice work here.
Okay.
Same thing, Jordan Paul Haro. But the main thing that I interact with fans and everybody in general is Twitter. So,
Okay.
or X, I think is more accurate. But yes, this was wonderful.
Well, listen, guys, it has been an absolute pleasure. I hope you guys enjoyed. Of course, I would love if you liked and subscribed to this video and some of my other socials. But you have officially been acknowledged by the pack. Welcome to the House of Hounds.